This episode is brought to you by Plugra European-style butter, crafted for those who demand precision and exceptional results in the kitchen. With 82% butter fat and a slow churn process, Plugra gives you flakier crusts, fluffier cakes, and rich, melt-in-your-mouth pastries. Because great baking starts with great butter. Unlike standard American butters, which have only 80% butter fat, Plugra ensures the ideal moisture and fat balance so your recipes turn out just right every time. That's why professional chefs trust Plugra and home bakers love it. Plugra's slow churn process creates a smooth, creamy butter that gives dough a soft, pliable texture, making rolling, folding, and laminating effortless. Whether you're perfecting a buttery pie crust or layering a delicate croissant, Plugra helps you bake with confidence. Experience the difference for yourself. Find Plugra in stores near you or visit plugra.com. That's Plugra.com.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Hey, welcome to Beer Sessions Radio on Heritage Radio Network. I'm Jimmy Carboni. This is a special on-site recording. We're at the Round Table Brewing Tap Room in South First Street, Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I am so thrilled to be here. This is our 16th year on Heritage Radio Network, and we've got a great lineup here. We're going to taste a lot of beers and talk with a great group of people. So let's go around the room. You guys will each introduce yourselves.
I'm Courtney Iseman. I'm a freelance writer and content consultant in craft beer and spirits. I write for places like Washington Post, Craft Beer and Brewing, craftbeer.com, Food and Wine, etc.
And Courtney, you can say journalism still living?
Yeah. Dare to believe.
Well, we appreciate all that you do.
All right, so I'm Ricardo Petroni. I'm one of the co-founders and brewmaster of Round Table Brewery.
And what's this place here called? In Williamsburg. This
is Round Table Brewery Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
Very original. But
like that.
Pat Fondiller, sales manager, Round Table Brewing.
And a legend. We're going to go way back with you to the gate in the 1990s.
I've been around the block, that's for sure.
And our good friend,
Miguel Rivas, the beer trekker, photographer, storyteller.
And we're lucky that you're here in town. You got to join the recording, and
you're join last minute
share
here
some
with
of your photos. So.
with the next coworker. I used to work with Pat at Alewife in Queens.
Well, that's great. Well, we got a lot of real beer people here at the table. So, hey, let's start up with Ricardo. Ricardo, I met you last year. It was about a year ago. It was the last night at Spite and Dival in Williamsburg, which is right around the corner, with the incomparable Manny Del Carmen of Niche Brands. And if Manny introduces me to someone, I pay attention.
That's great. Yeah, it was a great time there in Spite and Dival, and we were kind of all hanging with a lot of people. Manny was introducing me to different people. I think was a great way of getting acquainted with some of the personalities here in the city, which I didn't know. So it was a pleasure to meet you.
Well, thanks, man. So give us the backstory. You had been involved in beer a little bit.
Yes.
Tell us what your background is, and then how you guys opened up in Johannesburg.
Not to make it very long, but people can tell that I have an accent. I'm from Argentina originally. I moved here in 2007. I'm an engineer by trade. That's what my work was. And I did working in hydraulic engineering and all, things related to science and environmental sciences.
Like dams and pumping water?
It was a lot of more contaminated water and kind of contaminated water. I worked in the Hudson River with things here, but I worked in Argentina before that. And the idea was to kind of basically remediate the water. And so all that gives a lot of background on how to actually kind of the chemical physical portions of the water and all the chemistry, and beer has a lot of that. So for me, it was like a very interesting scene. I started brewing actually when I was finishing my master's at MIT in 1998. That's when I started brewing. I homebrew for a while. And then one day I decided I didn't want to do kind of engineering anymore. In 2013, I went to study a little bit more. I was still doing consulting, but I was studying a little more about like how to brew in bigger fashion. I took a course in Vermont and kind of how to get to the professional side. And then
What was the course in Vermont?
it was the American Brewers Guild. They used to have like a course there. I don't know if they're still doing it, but like so then we moved 1 year or so from 2013 when I did that, and then I started Equilibrium Brewery with
Sexy, right here in Williamsburg, South First Street. I love it here. There's a backyard too.
I know.
Ambience.
And then after Equilibrium, like we started that in 2015, and then that is kind of what I got my teeth on the professional brewing and getting into the market, and that was very successful. By in a couple of years we grew tremendously, and then in 2019 I left. It kind of had some inconvenience there, but like I left, and then I decided to kind of move on. Eventually I got bought out, and then I started this new project in the pandemic. During the pandemic, like there's nothing to do, so I started brewing again. You know how it is. And then with that we started RoundTable. For RoundTable, actually, it started. Kind of the push for it was a friend of mine that moved here in the local area, which is my partner Javier, also from Argentina, 40 years friends. So he wanted to kind of get into this, and he pushed me a little bit on kind of doing this again. And I'm glad I did.
Wow, was it lucky that you took over the original space that was Industrial Arts
Yes.
in Garnersville, New York, and I know that they must have gutted and built that out from an old factory.
Yes, that place is phenomenal. It's 200-year-old building that has a lot of different businesses inside, and very convoluted. And Chef O'Neill did a great job, kind of remodeling all that and putting like a 25 hectoliter Braucon four vessel brew house, which is amazingly good. I was very surprised when I saw that in 2016.
Wait, so you got to take over the system that Jeff O'Neill built?
We actually didn't take over the brewery itself. We took over that location. What happened is Jeff O'Neill, as you may know, he moved his operation to Beacon, New York. So he had like a super big operation there, and he was very successful in this place in Garnerville. So he needed to move away, and I found that out. It was kind of serendipitous because I was like, we were already having some recipes that we liked, and we were looking for a location, and then all of a sudden I entered into Pro Brewer site, which I haven't entered for 6 months, and I see this that was posted 2 days before, and I was like, okay, I need to see this, and I talked to Chef, like I called him and said, hey, Chef, it's Ricardo, and he knew me from Caribbean times, and we connected, and it was great.
It's amazing. It's like they always say, you shouldn't build out your own restaurant or your brewery because there's always one available, right? Courtney, I know you said you've been up to Garnerville. So what do you know about RoundTable, and tell us what you've experienced, and we might have a few questions to get them
I
started.
have so many questions.
That's why you're on, because you're the best journalist that we know.
Well, first of all, are you based in Rockland County? Was that like a space that was nearby?
I live close by. I live in Mahwah, New Jersey, which
Okay,
is just right in the border of Rockland County. So
Okay, yeah.
I like 25 minutes from the brewery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was the plan to always end up with a location in the city as well, or were you just kind of like feeling it out, seeing how it went? This location in Garnerville came about, and how long? Because you opened this pretty quickly after opening in
Yes.
Garnerville.
I would say it was always the idea was to have several locations. I think I needed to move. I moved faster than I anticipated because I thought it was important to have more awareness in the city of what our brand has to offer. Garnerville location is on one side, phenomenal. The place is great. And I encourage people listening to this to go visit because, I mean, we're going to have a blast. But at the same time, you need to do a trek to get there, you know, and it's not it's not to easy access. So I think, you know, for that reason, the foot traffic is not there. And we need something that creates more awareness on what we can offer. So that's why the Williamsburg location was like, you know, the Brooklyn idea was kind of developed originally, but it was moved faster than anticipated.
Great.
Are you doing all the brewing there?
Well, I'm doing the brewing with my partner Javier. Javier is doing most of the brewing today. I'm trying to kind of ramp up the sales with Patrick here. So, and that's my work shifted a little bit. Javier is doing most of the brewing with our brew team over there, which is amazing. They've been since day one working with us.
Great. Well, since we're talking beers, Courtney, I guess you're going to try one too. What's the first beer that we have in front of us? Because this is, I tried your beers last year at our Pig Island event. I know you're coming out to some of our festivals this year. Mm-hmm. And that reminded me of old school, like the early days of beer events where there's the brewer or the owner or both there tasting you through all these different beers. And I was just thrilled that you embraced that role because I spent a lot of time with you at that event and I got to taste so many of your beers. But to be here in your new tap room and having a great Pilsner on tap, no, Pat, what you should say what your role is too, because again, Pat, we know you from the Gate many years back, Smuttynose rep, Alewife. You've been a huge part of the New York craft beer scene for over 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm heading up the sales effort over here at RoundTable. I left Alewife in early December 2024, and I beefed up my LinkedIn account, and Ricardo reached out to me. And honestly, I didn't know anything about him or about the brewery. And so I clandestinely came here one night after I spoke to him with my lady, and we tried all the beers. And I went home just kind of blown away by the liquid and how good it was. And then we talked the next day. And I asked Ricardo if I could have a week to like kind of feel around and see what else was out there. And one day, I think it was on a Friday afternoon, I was sitting at home and I was thinking about him and how cool he was. And as soon as I had that thought, he texted me on the phone and I was like, this is probably meant to be. So we met again and here we are.
Super cool.
Yeah. So what are the plans of, having a director of sales? I mean, you've got a brewery. You've got an outpost. What role do you take on, Pat?
Right now, I'm trying to get the beer into as many places as I possibly can. We just hired a kid that I trained the last few weeks, and today is the first day we set him out on his own. So trying to get him up to speed. There's a million places in New York City. Basically want to build a baseline of places that are ordering over and over and over again. And then I'm going to start working on bigger fish. What's your secret? Is there a target number of accounts that you want to get to? Yeah, 1 million. Well, I'll tell you, years ago, I can say this. When the 6 Point guys first started now, I don't know, almost 20 years ago, I remember that Jeff, one of the reps, and then the marketing guy then said, our goal is to get to 200 accounts, and that's our first goal. Yeah. Does that sound about right? I mean, that's a good start. I think we hit 132 counts the last 2 weeks, me and Chris, and we'll see what happens. Manny, who's not here yet, he's on his way. Hopefully he gets here before the end of the show, but he did a pretty good job getting the beer into a bunch of off-premise places and some on, and then when I started reaching out to places that I've been working with for many, many years that have always supported me and got the beer into those places. But bigger picture, I'm going to look for some bigger fish after we get a base. Pat, just one thing about you. I mean, you've, especially the fact that you worked in the Gate, anyone who's a good beer seal bar guy got to meet everyone, every brewery, and a lot of respect for you. What was it about RoundTable? Besides that Ricardo's cool and neat, you say a few things about the beer because obviously. Yeah, honestly, it was his personality, and we had a frank conversation about the state of the business, and has a really good perspective on where things are right now, and that attracted me to it. The liquid was really good, and I felt like after speaking to him a second time that I could really do something with the brand.
Well, how about this? Why don't you get Courtney a Pilsner and the rest of us another Pilsner, because it's really good, and then Ricardo can start talking about it. And Miguel,
Gotcha.
how are you, man? Give Miguel your mic, and it's great to have you in New York. I know you're always somewhere judging, photographing. I mean, bring us up to date on where you've been lately, because you're a well-traveled beer guy.
Since last we saw each other, since last I was in the show, I was in last year. I spent most of my time in Latin America. Spent a month and a half in Mexico traveling, and then 2 months in Brazil, traveling around Brazil. And yeah, it's good to be back again. I got here right in time for the winter. Lovely. But yeah, it was nice to be back in Brazil, see what's going on over there. I went to judge on my first competition in Brazil. So that was interesting, to such a huge country, and to be able to judge in a competition with mostly local beers was pretty interesting, and also to keep exploring what's happening in Latin America.
Wow, that's great, man. And what do you think of this Pilsner?
Well, I was here when I came back, so I stopped here right before they opened this location. So I met Ricardo. They were actually getting ready, so I just walked in and introduced myself. We started talking, and as soon as we started talking and I mentioned lagers, Ricardo said, well, we have one right here. And I tried it, and I was blown away, because I'm a huge fan of well-made lagers. I know that that's like a thing now. Everybody's making or attempting to make lagers. So when I tried this one, I was really surprised by, a good traditional, German pills, and, they do it right. They respect the times and the process. So I was very happy.
I'll say it again. Whenever I've been out all day working, first thing I want is a good lager or pills, because my stomach's always upset, and it really does settle my stomach.
Yes, I believe that.
Yeah. So Ricardo, why don't you tell us a little bit about the lineup of beers you have, and did you guys the plan when you were making your own beers?
So yeah, so let me start with the philosophy on the beers, and like what we pay a lot of attention to making the beer a well-balanced experience. Like, it's about the mouthfeel, it's about the flavors need to be right, it's about how the beer feels in your mouth. I mean, like I'm always saying, and that when you put the beer in your mouth, whatever it is it even it's a sour beer, a dark beer, a lager, it needs to be not insulting. Okay, and people have fun with that, but I mean it, because sometimes you put like beers that are kind of astringent, or they have like side effects that people get used to, but I don't think they should be there. So we pay a lot of attention to the water, to the way we make the beer. So the lineup is reflecting on how we are taking on a breadth of different styles, from lagers to IPAs, on stout that we have, and several sours. And we are heavy on the sours. We have like about 10 different variations of sour beers with different fruits and different barrel agings and different processes. And one of the reasons is that because I really love that style. My wife, which is one of the main partners, we're 3 partners. My wife is one. She loves that too. And so, and we think we can do something that's unique on the sour side, that is actually resembling some of the best beers without, this is always a difference, but like kind of trying to get there with some of the best Belgian beers on the start, and I think, what I wanted to offer is a wide variety of experiences, not just one style kind of mastered, but like a lot of different styles that are recurrently coming. So most of the beers we make, we keep making. We only do very few beers that is a one-off. So we decide recipes based on something that we want to stick with, that we want to represent something, and not just a one-off that happened to occur to us and then we toss some new hop and that's it. And I think the times for doing that, which were fun, and I'm referring to my previous brewery. I mean, it was fun to do that. I think it was like it's gone. I mean, I think people prefer beers that are
So like the
solid
hop
and
apocalypse
repeatable.
is over.
I don't think it's over. I mean, I think I do like a good hazy IPA, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of different things that you could be trying, and you should be trying. So that's kind of what the philosophy of what we're doing is. So we're drinking the Pilsner now. I think probably next we can drink a Fake Recipe, which is a very well balanced 6% IPA. And then probably one of the beers that I want to offer to you guys today to try is Alto Lindo, which is one of the Alto Lindo it's kind of
It's
the
a
beer.
weird beer.
No, it's a Brettanomyces mixed fermentation beer. It's the beer
We like that.
that got the glass.
I am going to call it weird. Just
Yeah.
like
That's
I'm going to take a step back and just let you know where I'm coming from. We've been in the industry a long time, and what I appreciate about talking to you and trying your beers is that I'm aware that there's people that are 22, 23, 24, 25, that a lot of this stuff is new.
Yes.
And I almost feel like when we talk now, we have to realize that there's a lot of young people, and I'm talking to my daughter who's 22. She wants to try all this stuff, and she knows about good things. And I just want to realize that when we talk, let's realize that we're not all old guys who know all this stuff.
You're
So we don't.
absolutely right.
Brett sounds crazy to me, even though I want to have a great beer made with Brett.
Yes. And so Brettanomyces is I mean, for people that are not so familiar with what that means, it's a mixed fermentation beer. It's a beer that's fermenting with different yeast and bacteria at the same time. Typically beers are done with only one Saccharomyces strain of yeast at the same time. So the lagers, the Pilsner will have one only kind of Saccharomyces strain that it will be producing the beer. Mixed fermentations are more challenging and at the same time more rewarding in the sense that they provide a lot of different flavors. And the reason is the combination of the different biota there, like microbiology, working on different levels and making different flavors. So Alto Lindo was the beer that when we made that in my basement, after about 50 different tries, and I found it and I kind of created that. We created that with Javier. It was like, okay, this is the beer that will be what we want. I mean, it was the reason why we came back. I came back to the business. And I like it that much. I think it's a great exponent of what a Brettanomyces beer can be. And it's very complex and at the same time refreshing, which is one of the things that I like about it. So I think we should drink Alto Lindo after drinking this. This now we have here, it's Fake Recipe.
Short one.
Cheers.
Salute.
That's got a great aroma. This beer, you can smell it from a few feet away.
Yeah.
Great.
So I don't know.
We all just did like a little wow. And this is a hoppy beer.
It's a coffee beer. It's a New England IPA by design, but I think it's well balanced. And again, it doesn't have any astringency. It doesn't have any residual flavors that you don't like. It's smooth, and the water is right. We have the system. We improved, if I can say that, the Chef O'Neill's system in the sense that we added an RO reverse osmosis system to treat the water. So what that means for people that are not more familiar with this is that all the water that's coming, which upstate, the water is not as soft and nice as you see in New York City. It's more hard. So we take all the hardness away and we take all the minerals away. And then we add the minerals we want to have in that beer. So what that makes is that we can make the water of a Pilsner like a clean water, because that's how Pilsners were designed or were, like done in Germany. We can also make the IPA water more full of minerals. And so we can choose and pick the minerals we want.
Yeah, that's the benefit of your background. Like being an engineer working with water is, you can tell the difference, I think. I just want to say, I think your lineup is so good for now and sets you up to be timeless. Because as you were saying, I think the novelty has worn off on breweries throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks and really super crazy things. But at the same time, you have variety. You do have something for everyone. I went to your Garnerville location with family, and every single person liked something different, and everyone found something that they loved. But you're still doing everything so well, right? Like not everyone can brew all these different styles well. They're full of flavor, but they're not crazy. They're still refreshing. So yeah, I mean, your balance is amazing. But I want to ask you about the Alto. Is this Alto Lindo that's Solera aged?
That
Because that's
Tolindo,
incredible.
Yes. So we have a version of Alto Lindo.
So this is a third beer.
This is
This
the
is
fourth
something I
beer.
snuck in myself. I'm sorry, but I saw
We like
Solera
that.
and I'm like, that is very rare in craft beer still. So that I'm
Yes.
like, got very excited.
So what happened is this: the Alto Lindo beer, which is
We're toasting. Okay, we're breaking everybody in. This is how you toast.
so the what happened is that the Alto Lindo, which is the beer that I was mentioning before, that was kind of what I decided it was like the key ingredient of my lineup, and actually have a big poster in Garnerville of it, and like so. That beer, we decided to make a barrel aged version of that. And we tested that in my basement and it was phenomenal. And it was like, okay, we're going to make a Solera with this. And so we have a Solera system with barrel age. So the Solera system, it is in a system where we have a vertical lineup of 4 different barrels, and we use bourbon barrels for this. And, we fill all of them. And then after they fill, basically what you do is you take from the bottom one, you take the beer that you want to package, only half the barrel, and then you fill that from the barrel that's on top of it. And then the third barrel you fill from the second barrel, and the first barrel will fill the second, and the second. And then you put new beer in the top one. So what happened with that is that you're basically aging these in different stages on the different barrels, and then the aging takes longer, but also it's blending. And so the blending makes it so round. And so like any differences in what Brettanomyces can bring, which are usually very particular in bringing different flavors sometimes. And, it's all blending and creating some experience. Also, what's important about this beer is that we use the traditional method that they use in Belgium of depending on kind of mixing new beer with barrel-aged beer that will come out from the Solera, depending on kind of what the flavor profile needs to be. So there is a blending art that is coming in, which I think is valuable because it provides a lot of kind of this is what we want this beer to be. So we blend it to flavor.
Courtney, it's a great question. It's very sexy. I mean, Solera, I always think of sherry. There's a classic
Totally.
in Spain, but I don't think most Americans really know about it, but I'm glad that you did explain it. Are you familiar with the Solera system?
Yeah, I wish you were open. A while ago, I wrote a story about outside of sherry who's using it. And like I said, it's very rare in beer. What I think is really cool is I think when you have a beer like this, and even just your Belgian styles in general, I think that's a good entryway for people who drink wine or spirits and think that they don't like beer.
Yes, I agree. Alto Lindo is a beer that we use for that a lot. I mean, like it's even the base one. It's a beer that we offer to people that they say, well, I don't drink this. I drink just wine, or and it's a sour that's so complex that many wine drinkers like it. And actually, I found out, the experience has been that women tend to like the sour beers more than men for some reason, which I always found it curious, but like they tend to like it a lot.
And then, how do you define sour? Because I think also for the average person, some people, for a while, people thought fruited sours were sexy, but my mind, it's like a really good lambic.
That's a pet peeve I have. Like, I think, one of the things I found when I came out with the sours was that people were naming sours a lot of different styles. Than when I started, it was only one style. So for me, the sours were always the ones coming from Belgium. from in the local environment. It was Hill Farmstead. It was people that were doing really good, solid Belgium style sour beers that were very, very balanced. And then what happened is that people starting to do kind of cutting corners on making sours that were too sour. And then because they were too sour, they were adding a lot of fruit and then making a sweet sour with a lot of fruit that's unfermented. And it's a pet peeve because I've seen a lot of cans exploding because of those things, and it's a pity that people are cutting corners and creating like names that now it's a problem to name a beer a sour because people don't know what it is. So in my case, what I did, which I don't know if it's a good idea marketing wise, maybe Peter, but here will hate it, but like I called Alto Lindo Rusticale on purpose because I didn't want to call it a sour. Because I didn't want to kind of get into that grinding of discussing what the sour is or not supposed to be, So
I think that's a really good point, and we've talked about that a lot recently. I mean, you think about Suarez; they've got a country beer. I mean, most people don't know what sour means. I mean, if you're going through your 4 or 5 taste profiles, I mean, I used to work with kids on this. You've got salty, you've got sour, you've got sweet. Sour was like biting into a lemon. I don't know any sour beer that is like biting into a lemon.
No.
And you, why don't you tell our listeners about your beer education? Because when you do talk about these great Belgian beers, I think about Cantillon and other lambics, they're not like a lager and they're definitely not like an IPA. So what are the beers that you love? If I'm starting out in beer, how would I get turned on to a great Belgian sour beer? Which beer should I taste?
What beer should you taste? Well, clearly the good examples. I mean, the beer coming from Belgium are the best examples of what that style used to be. Like anything that is spontaneous fermentation coming from Belgium, that they already know that the spontaneous fermentation is going to be nice, like Cantillon, like Fontaine. And I do like a lot the Flemish Reds from Roudenbach. Then when you go to local, though, there is a lot of great exponents. I mean, Cascade makes great sours. Hill Farmstead are one of my favorites still. I mean, like the nice balanced profiles of those beers is phenomenal. Then you got Casey, you got Side Project, you got like so there's many people, and even in Equilibrium we're doing really nice sours. I don't know if they're still doing them, but like. But I think there is the local capacity to find out something, but there is also the Belgium styles, which typically are. I mean, what I notice is the American versions or the version that we are doing. Just talking about us at RoundTable, how we think about it. It's a little bit less. We tend to have flavors that are less complicated than what a Belgian beer will be, in the sense that. A Belgian beer, they may have like this ditch flavor, like a dry ditch kind of flavor that is a little bit more aggressive to most of the palates.
Is it dry ditch?
Yes. That's
Horse blanket is the famous.
Yeah. So those flavors
Everyone's like, what is a horse blanket? What does that taste like?
Well, if our friend BR Roya rides horses, she'll tell you what a horse blanket smells like. It doesn't have to be dirty. It's definitely sweaty.
So yeah, those flavors and smells. I mean, you get used to them, and they're actually nice. It's like a good camembert cheese. Like those kind of flavors. And
see, that's a good comparison.
Yeah, totally.
I think one reason you say horse blanket, all these things, just using the word sour is not hard. It's not hard to understand, but bringing in food comparisons and other thing. Yeah. It's really important.
So we tend to not go
especially
into
on
that.
Sales.
We tend to not go into that. We were tailoring all our mixed cultures to be more on the fruited side. Like they spread lemony, they spread fruity, they spread flowers.
Are they still dry?
They're still very
so
dry.
It's dry. It's like almost you should be saying dryness instead of sourness.
Well, I mean, some beers are dry that are not sour. So that's why sour. I mean, these beers are acidic and they feel a little bit sour. So that is absolutely true. Their pH is more sour. They have more lactic acid inside. And sometimes, like a good Flemish beer, they will have acetic acid. We do produce one Flemish beer here because it's a style I like. We don't sell that much of it, but I made like a lot of it because I like it. Uh, and
And that means I like him too.
One characteristic I notice about these beers is that they don't turn my stomach over. And you were explaining to me why. It might have to do with the water, right? And whether
I think it has to do with the water and also the
they're acidic, but they don't make
we balance the acidic. I mean, again, we work a lot on having a curated mixed culture. It's not just a random culture. You know, people ask me about it. It's like, no, it's a curated culture that it took me like a lot of iterations, like I was saying, like more than 50 to get it right. And that iteration makes it so it's sour enough, but it's not too sour. And it's like, it has the tartness that you need and you want, but it's not gonna be kind of giving you a heartburn. And that's what you want. And I think, you know, most of the expressions of when you cut corners, you get into the heartburn or you get into adding a lot of sugars to make it sweet and cut it. You know, those are the things, you know. So these beers take longer. That's the problem with Alto Lindo, for instance, is a beer that is economically is probably not very feasible. I just like it. I think we should do it because I can do it, and so people need to try it. Economically speaking, it's probably not a great idea because it takes like 8 weeks to do when the IPA takes 3. So it's you know, and that's an additional cost and additional things. So, but I just like it. I think it's something that people should know about.
I think it's great that you're telling us that you want to make beer that you like, that makes your stomach feel good. I feel it's the same thing that's going on with natural wine. If you believe in that, it should be the same thing. You take your time with it, and it makes your stomach feel good, and that's
Absolutely.
a great thing to say. I want to bring on Pat. You want to just introduce our friend who just walked in?
my brother from another mother. I've known this guy forever, as you have. I love him to death. I love him like a brother. We used to play baseball together. We sold a lot of beer together. We did a lot of events together, and I couldn't be happier to be working with him. Mr. Manny Calderon Jr.
Yes, thank you.
Hi guys.
Jimmy, Manny, so great. You know, you're the guy. It was almost a year ago, spring of 2024. We were at one of the last nights at Spite and Dive, just around the corner here in Williamsburg, and you introduced me to this guy, Ricardo from Round Table.
Oh, that was
So tell us about how you discovered him, because you're kind of like how would you describe him, Pat? He's like the beer what? Wait, you got to give him the microphone.
Man, he's a true Renaissance man.
But he does
He's
discover
everywhere. He's
people. I mean,
the
what's a good
hardest
word for someone that has for over 20 years discovered?
It was like a record, like a cool record producer.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Thinking like punk rock days, like going around plucking out the real
Yeah.
talent.
So Manny, like it's so
I remember if I can interject something. I remember when we were at the event in Chelsea. It was in March last year. We were at an event in Chelsea here, and we were slinging beer, like just kind of the initial portions. I mean, we started Round Table in November 2023. This was in March 2024, and he tried the Mancha Fruta Raspberry, which is one of the sour beers we make with raspberries, and he started blabbing for an hour to me about how I needed to go to work with him, and I'm glad I did pay attention to what he was saying.
Yeah, my first impression with Ricardo was like, holy moly, there's a Spanish guy in New York that is actually making phenomenal beer, and that's unheard of, especially in this industry. For 26, 27 years, I've been doing this in New York City, and it was a breath of fresh air, I would say, because the liquid speaks for itself, and it's not many people in New York State is actually making this kind of liquid.
Manny, plug yourself. I mean, you've been doing this a long time. It doesn't go way back, but your role in finding someone like Ricardo. Are you a broker, distributor?
I would say I'm a little bit of everything. I mean, we work with each other hand in fist. I mean, we're straight up with each other, and in this world and this age, there's not many distributors that are really hands on and trying to develop brands that are for the long term, not for the short term. A lot of these guys in New York, everything is very fast paced, and everything got to take time to really develop. And I'm glad that Ricardo's actually making quality beer, and he got a good guy next to him to make it happen in the New York City market, which is obviously tough.
In the last few years, besides Ricardo, let our listeners know that there's been a few other brands that you brought into market here.
Oh, well, when I decided to get back into the distribution network in New York City, I wanted to find a niche. I mean, Niche Brands is the company that I started. It's more of a marketing and developing marketing company for craft beers in New York. I saw a void in the market when it comes to people that look like me. I'm Puerto Rican, and people that are African American.
Your hair's different today.
A little bit.
He's a little bit cleaner cut now.
A little bit. But I just
New
saw
glasses.
little glasses. Yeah, I'm getting older a little bit. I just saw a void in the market where people of color didn't have any type of representation in the New York City beer distribution market, and I saw that a little bit troubling because I know a lot of people of color are making great beer, and I wanted to help them and give them that little alley oop.
So first, you introduced me to Montclair Brewing, and then there's another one that begins with an M. You've had them in the market for a while, but I'm blanking on their name. One of you, just tell us of all the other brands you have in the market right now, or brought to market.
Ramstein is actually one of the brands that I brought back into New York City after Manhattan Beer decided to let them go, let a lot of the little small craft breweries go into the market. And I know Greg forever, and I know Greg is well respected in the industry. And I wanted to represent his brand, get his brand back into the market. And we are doing that slowly but surely. Another brand that we brought back into the market is Sly Fox out of Pennsylvania. Sly Fox is a family-owned brewery out of so many years.
I can't believe this Sly Fox. Courtney, have you ever had Sly Fox?
I don't think I've had it. No.
I can't believe that they weren't in the market. They used to have an amber lager that was one of my favorite beers.
Yeah, Sly Fox family-owned brewery. I know them forever. I introduced them into the New York City market. Manhattan Beer and I worked on a deal, and they actually took over the distribution when I was going through some times in my life.
This was quite a while ago, 10,
quite
15
about 10,
years
15 years ago. Manhattan Beer had, quite a little small portfolio that I brought to them, and unfortunately things didn't work out when you work.
And you still called it Niche Brands then, didn't you?
Yes. Niche Brands is something, a very interesting name that I thought of, and I ran with it.
Well, man, I love you because you always come up winning.
I'm trying.
I know you got great instincts and everything.
Trying.
Well, if you get to meet Courtney, this is almost like an introduction show because there's a lot of cool people here. And, Courtney Iseman's become one of the definitely dedicated journalists who's writing across, major publications about beer. And I did want you to meet some of these people. I mean, we got Miguel, who you've only seen on Instagram as Beer Trekker, Pat Fondiller, who goes way back to the 1990s as a bartender at The Gate, which was one place where craft beer started. And now you met Manny, who also goes back as far as that. So I don't know. You take the floor, Courtney, because you got some great questions, and really appreciate that you're here with us too.
Oh, well, thank you. It is really great to meet everyone. In terms of questions, I actually wanted to make sure we get to it. I know, Ricardo, before we started recording, we were talking a bit about sort of the actual atmosphere here.
Yes.
I think because it's part of it, I think every brewery now kind of has to have a story, right? And you happen to authentically have a real unique story. And I was reading on your website, I think it's called Asado, the Argentinian spontaneous barbecues.
Yes.
So I
like that.
I think it'd be really cool to hear a bit about that and how it sort of informed the overall atmosphere and ethos of the brewery.
Well, what happened is that, when I went back to the basics and started brewing again with my partner, Javier now, Javier is a friend of mine from high school. So we know each other for 40 years. And then he introduced me to my wife, Maria Jose, which is also a partner. And so the three of us, we used to have gatherings all the time that are revolved around food and drinks, and those are the asados. I mean, the asados are a very traditional way of meeting in Argentina, where pretty much they were happening every Saturday.
It would be barbecue, but asado is better.
Asado sounds like asado is the name that we give to the barbecue, yes. But our barbecues are kind of with the Argentinian way of doing it is with, we have chorizos, we have different cuts of meats. We don't do kind of hamburgers or things like that. We just kind of have a lot of meats and different things, and we cook with ambers. So it's a process. And in that process, the interesting thing about it is that we were so into it that I remember that sometimes, I mean, in my house back in Argentina, I was waking up on a Saturday, and then just going down to where I have my parrilla, which is the barbecue place, and
Cheers.
and start starting the fire with food and whatnot, with hardwood, and people will come. And I didn't know who was coming. I was just like friends, family will show up. And they show up, and then we keep, they bring something, and we all kind of share that. And it didn't matter the place. I mean, it was not about the place. It was about the spirit of the people just
From
gathering.
a parking lot to a backyard.
It was like
Anywhere.
it didn't matter. So and so when we started working on making these, we were always reflecting on, and that's why we put it round table to the name. The round tables are kind of cool because, I mean, you always have more space in a round table to gather somebody else, and also everybody is in the same place. In everybody that there is no more important than other. It's like we're all kind of collaborating and participating in this gathering, and that's the kind of the reason for the name. And when we were looking at the Gardnerville location and this location also in Brooklyn, we wanted to have that nonchalant kind of spirit of how we feel it. And so if you look at it, it's like, it's eclectic. It's not designed in a certain way. It's not to show something. It's just to kind of make you feel comfy. Mm-hmm. So you will find something that you will like.
You know what?
Sit there.
I know what's great is that Miguel Rivas is here taking photos, but last year when I met you, we were at Spite and Dival around the corner and it closed. This feels like Spite and Dival to me. Did you have a role in that, man?
No. It's funny, man. I know Joe Carroll since he opened Spite and Dival, and it's sad to see Spite and Dival go, but it does definitely look and have that feel, I would say, because I don't know. It actually I think it's the same size, if I'm not mistaken.
It's very
right?
similar.
It's very similar size, right?
I'd say this is the ideal. And this is the template. Now you have to come to Round Table Brewing, South First Street in Williamsburg. It's the same kind of layout as Spite and Dival, a little different. And you walk out and there's a back door too.
Yep.
It's probably the ideal setup for a bar.
Yeah, I think so. And so I'm loving this spirit of it. And it's funny because, I mean, I was telling Courtney before that we didn't struggle making this because it was just an expression of what we are, of how we express ourselves. And so, and I found it very interesting that people are receptive to that.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't sure if they're going to see it or they're going to understand that this is just a place to be comfortable drinking and having a good time with your friends.
Yeah.
So besides asado, is there a word that you associate with what this is? Because it's very confusing. Now there's a natural wine bar strikes a chord with some people. Bistro used to mean a lot to me. I mean, why would you say to someone, because this isn't a brewery tap room is not a good word. Yeah. This is not a brewery tap room. This is an outpost, but it's something else. So how would you describe this space, this room?
I don't know if I have a specific word. I think people need to try it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's actually a word for this type of space.
It's a bar.
It's a bar.
Yeah.
But
Feels like I know it's not literally a cafe, but it has more of that old school European cafe vibe where you can come here in the afternoon, you can have a low ABV beer while you're working on your laptop, and then your friends come and then you stay all night.
That's the vibe of it. Yes. Mm-hmm. It's like a very relaxed space. So
it's like a human scale. It's human scale. So it's like you can come in here and feel not overwhelmed, and it's very welcoming, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I will agree with that.
Yeah,
that's a good definition.
Let's have Miguel. You've traveled a lot, and you're from Venezuela, and you're my buddy. But what do you think? You're taking pictures. What do you see in this space?
Well, first I was listening to Ricardo when he was talking about asados, and I just wanted to add that as somebody who's not from Argentina, and being in Argentina and seeing the asado culture, that to me blew my mind to the point that I said that if making asado was an event at the Olympics, Argentina will be the gold medal.
What do they have there? Break dancing.
No.
You know,
It's something very simple, and
could
for
have
me,
that.
the experience was that maybe it was also because I was with a bunch of other brewers from. I'm not a brewer, but I was from brewers from outside of Argentina, and they just like to be very, very good hosts. So they were competing to see who was the better host. So I was there for 2 weeks, and I ate asado every day, 2 times a day for 2 weeks. And on my last 3 days, on my last 3 days, I was telling the guys from Juguetes Perdidos, one of the local breweries there in Buenos Aires, like, dude, I need some green. I cannot continue doing this. I understand that you're trying to be a good host, but my body I'm dying. And it was just amazing to see that.
So
that
at the
culture.
asado, what's your favorite meat? It depends on the host.
I tried everything they threw in there. Again, every place that we were going, they were trying to up each other. So if one was making like a whole cow, then the next one will be and add some, like Ricardo was saying, they have all the cuts of meat, and then they have chorizo, they have blood sausage, they have these glands here. I can't remember. Mollejas. They had everything.
It's like a thymus or thyroid gland.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You eat everything.
They're
I know.
phenomenal.
Listen, I'll eat everything.
Yeah.
But to answer your question about this place here, when I got here, to me, I was just thinking about everybody was throwing out names, but to me, this is a local hanging, place where you can just come here, and it's not only about beer. Maybe people can come here and not have a beer, which will be a shame, but you can just come here, and it's very unassuming, very welcoming, very quaint. So to me, this is just like a local hangout, and kudos and a plus that it has amazing beer. So
And I think I think you're like, this is craft brewery 2.0 or maybe 3.0, but to me it's 2.0 because the fact that you could actually have tap rooms in New York only started in 2014, and the rush to have them was cool. My favorite tap room before this was the original Other Half tap room that was only a small room like this.
Yes.
And it had the same kind of like weather beaten wood on the walls. And I think that's timeless. And I think you got a timeless place. Courtney, you want to talk about brewery tap rooms? Because this isn't really a tap room. This is a sexy
This is a whole new thing.
hangout.
Yeah, I think I think, again, just like your beer lineup, I think your tap room is also just an evolution. It's, I don't think anyone but like the most diehard beer geek anymore is really that interested in sitting in like a Spartan industrial space where like nothing else is going on. I mean, again, the geekiest of the geeks of us will go and do that just to taste beer. But I think to bring in more people, to be more inclusive, to be more approachable, you want a space like this that maybe to someone it's a cafe, maybe to someone it's a bar, maybe to someone, it is that tap room.
That is
It can kind of, it's like adaptable.
Yeah,
And
that is correct.
Let's talk about our experience today. I'm going to say I came in again another day. I've been out all day. I can't even talk straight, and my stomach's upset. I wanted your lager, and I can keep drinking your lager. But now, this beer that Patrick just poured, now this is a beer that I would come back for and say, wow. I would come here after work just to have that lager, but then I want to drink. What was this, Patrick?
This is a simple shimmering sour called Bifrost. It's 5.5%. It's a base beer for some other beers that we fruit that are known as our Central series, which we make with raspberry, blackberry, or pineapple. And it's just an easy drinking, simple sour. It's tart, but it's not over the top sour.
So it's you're saying sour and it's tart, but it's not. It's wine-like.
Yeah, it is.
Who wants to try to talk to me and our listeners about how this actually really tastes? Because again, sour doesn't really make sense to me. Yeah, let's taste it through. Miguel's got probably one of the best tasters in the room is Miguel. How would you explain this to our listeners? That sour is too general. Sour is like biting a lemon. I'm sorry, but it's not that.
Well, I wouldn't.
That's the taste.
Sour,
the taste.
like Ricardo
Days of
was saying, I also have a
guidelines.
pet peeve with that when people started just overusing that term. To me, sour is a descriptor, like sweet, sour, salty. So I was
That's like candy and cereal. That's as far as it goes. We need to do better beer,
But this
guys.
beer, I would just say that it's it's a citrusy, very elegant beer. It has a lot of layers. You can start with some citrusy. It's dry. It's effervescent, so you have that. Also, those bubbles create that effect on your palate that you want to like have another sip right after. Very easy drinking, and yeah, that's.
And the alcohol content's important. If I said wine-like to me,
I don't know the alcohol, but I will say that this is around 5.
yeah.
5.5.
Because a lot of times people get into a beer like this and they throw it in a barrel and suddenly it's a 9 or 10% beer, which isn't what I wanted.
No. Yeah, you want these beers to be fresh. That's what the objective of this beer. I mean, kind of the design of the beers to me, people asking me like, what's your favorite beer? And they ask me that all the time. And it's like, I don't have that. Because I drink one beer or the other, depending on what I want that particular time. So sometimes, when you want something fresh and you want to accompany this with some, like, I don't know, something, a picnic that you're going outside, this is a phenomenal beer for that.
Fresh is a good word.
Yeah, it's fresh and it's
I think Ricardo was saying before, but the word shimmering, it has an amazing mouthfeel. He was talking about mouthfeel before, but I feel like the minerals that they put in this beer, you can really taste like they stand out. And I don't know what they are, but I know they're there.
It's kind of champagne-like, with the minerality and the acidity and like the beautiful effervescence. I think cider lovers would love this.
Yes.
I think, champagne lover, like it's so nice. And it's not the acidity bomb that's gonna make you feel like, bleh.
Yeah. I agree.
And then back to time. How much time did this beer take? Because I think you're onto something.
Those beers stay longer than the normal IPAs and whatnot. I mean, this beer was, again, we take a lot of pride on the design. Okay, so when we did Alto Lindo is a very complex beer, and we wanted to have something that it was a little bit less complex, was more straightforward. This is Bifrost. Bifrost was a lower ABV, more straightforward beer. Okay, so it's where kind of being fresh and drinkable was the most important thing. So, and also it needed to be something that we could get into the market at a price point that makes sense. Okay, Alto Lindo is a little bit more expensive because it takes way longer. So because of that, we were working a lot on finding kind of the right combination of bacteria and yeast, and we found something that we can do this beer in about 4 or 5 weeks, which is like, the time it takes to do a lager, but not the time it takes to do an IPA, and of course not the time it takes to do Alto Lindo and the other more sophisticated sours.
Delicious.
Love you, man. Well, let's get Miguel one more time because, I think we're just going to have time to taste these beers today. But I know you also have other beers from your world travels. But again, let's finish off talking about this beer because I think talking about beers is really hard. I think that, sometimes you don't have to talk about beer, but to get people interested, sometimes the right words really do make a difference. And I feel like that this industry needs to probably better speak about its own products.
Improve the language.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, and also simplify because also sometimes what not being a brewer and also having conversation with people who just want to drink the beer and they don't care about, people smelling it, looking at it, tasting it, not doing the judging part, to simplify a little the language as well, because some people get overwhelmed when you start just throwing out terms there that somebody who's not into the lingo, then it will be overwhelming. So I think Courtney said very well that this will be a beer that for someone who will say, oh, I don't like beers. And you say, do you like cider? Oh, I love cider. Okay, you should try this. And that's all. When you just say that, something that they can relate to, cider or champagne, they'll be like, okay, yeah. And then you try it. I have had that experience with people who tell me, I love that. When someone tells me, oh, I hate beers. And I say, well, you just haven't tried your beer. And they're like, what do you mean?
When I was 18, I could drink at 18 back then. I hated beer. I never would have drinking beer. And I was traveling in Europe, and that's how I started enjoying the taste of certain beers. So it's got to be an epiphany for a lot of people. You also have to be in the right place. I mean, I feel privileged, and probably all of us in this room, we've been in the industry. We have time in our workday to taste beer. We also have really good people like Manny and Pat and Ricardo taking the time to taste us on this beer and talk to us about it. But I think about people that are, not even younger, even middle age. If they work in an office job, they go out and they're kind of at the mercy of advertising, or maybe they go to one restaurant. And I personally, typically when I go out, I'm disappointed at the selection of wine, disappointed at the selection of beer. And I'm always a booster for the industry, but I'm like, you can do better, but you have to talk to the right people. And it's really hard to get it across to people who aren't doing this 24/7, that this is really interesting. I mean, the geeks and everyone else gets it, but I guess I do think about the average person. I'm like, I go to an average restaurant, I'm like, wow, I just want to have a brand that I like, but I don't want to try anything else. And how do you guys feel about that? I mean, in sales and your experience, because I feel like that's really the issue, is just that it's people need to take time to taste things and learn about it.
I'm going to add on what you just said, and kind of for me to finish this is you said that, and for me, part of in any business, be it food, be it beer, wine, education is crucial, because at the end of the day, and I tell this when I go and I travel and I give talks, I tell this in my talks, that 30% of the brewer's job is to make the beer. 30%. The other 70% is educate your consumer and create an experience. Those two are super important. Without educating your consumer and creating an experience, they're not going to come back. And in this day and age right now, how the industry is right now in beer, with over 10,000 breweries in the United States and many other thousands around the world, you cannot just rely on quality, because there's a lot of people making quality beer. So how do you set yourself apart? It's not going to be just by your products or your fancy labels or your, social media presence. It has to be educating your consumer and creating an experience. That's the only way that people are going to relate to you and be able to come back, creating a story.
Courtney, want to add anything to that?
I think that is the gist of what everyone needs to be focused on now. And also educating your staff, right? So the brewer might know everything, and he might not even, or she might not even realize that they're not, explaining things, because the knowledge is just there in them. It comes naturally, but you have to be able to translate that to your staff, who can then translate that to the person that's ordering at the bar. I'm sure that's a piece of what you're doing here.
And I'll say it one more time. And your customer, for the most part, is not in the industry. So yes, they work hard in whatever field they are. They want to come in and have something that's in front of them. When they drink that first taste, they're going to say, wow, you just took me somewhere else. And thank you. Otherwise, don't go out.
I agree totally. I think we kind of work out in the selection of bartending and training. I mean, in Gardnerville, all the bartenders are very well connected to the place we are making the beer itself, and then so they see what's going on, and I explain to them what's going on, and then every time there's a new beer, they tried it, and so the idea is to kind of maintain that awareness of what makes this beer different, and what when people come, it's important. Like you were saying, the fact of asking, they don't know what they want, or they kind of have some description. They say that I don't like beer that much, or I want something light, and time to kind of have an interpretation of what that means, and picking the right beer for them, and that requires that there is some basic knowledge that we strive to get into all our bartenders and people that are kind of consumer front of our company here and in Gardnerville.
Yeah, on a side note, I think
tell everybody your name again.
Manny Calderon Jr.
You came all the way from where today?
I just drove back from Palm Coast, Florida, visiting my mother.
And what was the first beer you wanted to have when you walked in?
I walked in and I wanted the Juntos because I wanted to swallow it quickly.
That's the lager?
That's the Pilsner.
Pilsner.
Yeah. We would have to actually really look back and really take back a couple of steps when we're talking about educating consumers, because I have a little pickle with the Brewers Association. The Brewers Association, from my many years in dealing with this industry and also looking at their publications throughout the years, never marketed craft beer towards people of color. And looking now at what we're dealing with, most of the people that are buying the beers that we're selling into the off-premise accounts and also in the supermarket chains are of Latin descent. And how do we explain to people that are, I would say, uneducated when it comes to craft beer, what beer is all about when they're accustomed to what they're drinking in their country? The marketing for the Brewers Association and also for the Black Brewers Association really have to really get their game plan on and really try to move forward to educating people that don't drink beer. And if they start doing stuff like that, I think we'll be in a better situation long term, because so many breweries are closing now. And I think it's a lack of education, lack of understanding the consumer long term. Not everybody wears beards. Some guys use gel too, so we got to market it towards everybody. Prejudice, there's no prejudice in beer. We have to really figure it out.
That's a great point. And it's also just having higher standards. You go into a bar or a restaurant, you want to expect that there's clean lines, that there's actually a decent selection of beer. You don't need 30, but maybe 4 different beers would be great in most restaurants.
I shaved this morning, so you got a bag on a beard, guys.
Pat has a
I'm
big
thinking
beard.
in a larger
Ricardo
sense.
has a beard.
Yeah.
Miguel used to have a beard.
And in a larger sense, from a sales perspective, right? We, as the brewer, the onus is on us to create the impetus for the customer to give a crap about us,
Of course.
right? And a lot of that has to do with the story. I know hanging out with other people, a lot of times in the market, they don't really get into that. They're just like, oh, we have this and like that. I think one of the things that really attracted me to RoundTable was that Ricardo's warmth and his he's just a nice guy, and the fact that it was a family-oriented business. His partners are his best friend from when he was 12 years old, and his wife, and we met as kids, and they were really awesome and smart, and this is all part of the story of RoundTable, and actually the idea of the RoundTable to begin with, where everybody's sitting around and there's a kaleidoscope of colors and everybody has a seat at the table. That's what Ricardo likes to say. So I really like that, and that's part of the story.
Yeah, what really freaked me out, I don't know if maybe a lot of people should know about this, but Ricardo was the brain behind Equilibrium.
He mentioned it briefly, and we were trying to get someone to talk more about that. So thank you, Manny.
I'm not trying to toot their horn, but I mean, if he's making a world-renowned beer that everybody in the world is really looking for, and whatever the case may be, I just want people to know that he was the guy behind that. He was the guy behind Equilibrium and that whole thing. And we wish Equilibrium the best of luck and everything, but I just want people to know that. Wow, that's something that.
So the magic's now at RoundTable.
I mean, the magic's going to be always around everywhere, but right now we're in Brooklyn, so yeah, we're
the magic's in this room. Okay, I'm going to ask the last question. Okay, we started this off, and it was the best intro ever. You're an engineer who worked with water.
Yeah.
And you've talked about how you can tweak the water and work with it. Just again, so we feel confident in your hands and the liquid that's in our glass. How important is water to beer? And then we'll toast and we'll say goodnight. So
It's super important. It's 90 more and like the 90% of the beer is just the water. So if the water doesn't taste right, the beer doesn't taste right. And I tried that with many different waters too. Like Alto Lindo, I remember working with Alto Lindo and with my partner, we were like, okay, so the water we want to have in the place where we want to be brewing it in upstate, how is it going to change the beer? So we made the beer with that water, and it wasn't good. It wasn't that good. It was metal. The flavor wasn't the same, and it was like, okay. And funny enough, I mean, we made a lot of people try it. Everybody was picking the one that was having the water that we designed versus the other water, and so people notice, even if they don't know anything. I was making this, like with friends that don't care about beer necessarily, and they were all just picking the difference and preferring the one that has the beer, the water that we decided. So that's how important it is to me, and how important it is for the flavor. And I think it's round up kind of how we can produce beers that are all well balanced, and then kind of we put a lot of strive into maintaining that target all the time.
And last one, the experience of a customer. Manny, you drove all the way from down south today. Your first beer was, once again,
The Juntos Pilsner.
the Pils. And how did that make you feel when you had that first beer?
What a beer should taste like, especially when
Settle
you're
your
driving
stomach.
17 hours, just to
Relax
get
you.
over here, relax me, is well balanced. And that's one thing that a lot of people got to understand too. That the Round Table's beers are well balanced and approachable. I mean, they could stand up to any of the beers that are out there in the market, and I'm glad that beers are being made well in New York City, and I'm glad that the guys are making that things happen. And I just look forward to seeing the success of Round Table in the New York market.
Well, Courtney, anything else you want to say on the way out?
No, just I'm again happy we all got to meet in person. I'm really excited to watch RoundTable grow. I'm happy that you're here in the New York City beer community. Yeah, I think this is a really different and special place.
Thank you.
Let's make a toast. Cheers to Courtney,
Cheers.
Ricardo, Pat, Miguel, and Manny. Thanks so much for joining me here on Heritage Radio Network. Big shout out to our engineers, George and Gabe, who will clean it up and actually make it better than ever. Big shout out to our new team, Heritage Radio Network. Support us, heritageradionetwork.org. Great new team from board chair to director to engineers. Really looking forward to this year, our 16th year in 2025. And big shout out. Thanks so much. Catch you next time. Beer Sessions Radio. All right. Thank you.